Hello, this is Mitch Kuhn with NHA. I'm going to be talking to you today about life settlements, how to sell your life insurance policy. We're going to start off with the basics. What is a life settlement? Well, simply stated, this is an investor buying a life insurance policy from a policy holder. Life insurance policies are considered a legal asset and can be sold just like any other asset. So to explain this, how this works, a life insurance policy is a contract between an insurance company and the policyholder to pay a certain amount of money upon the death of the policyholder. That's what constitutes the contract. Well, if for some reason, if the policyholder needs money prior to their death, or if for any reason they want to liquidate this policy before it comes to maturity, before it pays benefits, there are options to do that on the market. There's many investors who are willing to offer cash in exchange for becoming the beneficiary of the life insurance policy. So a little bit about the history of life settlements. These life insurance policies were ruled to be an asset in 1911 by the Supreme Court in Grigsby versus Russell in 1911. Dr. Grigsby purchased a policy from his patient, John Burchard, for $100 because John needed money to pay for a necessary surgical operation. This went all the way to the Supreme Court because when you purchase a life insurance policy, there has to be what's called insurable interest, meaning that the person taking out the policy needs to have a vested interest in that person's life continuing. So you can't just go buy a life insurance policy on a stranger. That's not legal. There has to be insurable interest. So the issue here was that Dr. Grigsby did not have insurable interest in John Burchard. The difference was, though, that they were not originating the life policy. John had bought this policy, and it was considered to be an asset of John's. So he's eligible to or able to do whatever he wants with that policy. Now, since life insurance is treated as an asset and a way to store wealth, to invest, then it has the characteristics of property. It's taxed like property, and so the Supreme Court ruled that in order to maintain the value of that life insurance, it needed to be transferable as property, and to not give a policyholder those rights severely diminishes the value of that policy. So as long as insurable interest is present when the policy is initially purchased, then it doesn't matter if that insurable interest is gone and no longer exists when the policyholder wants to transfer it to a third party investor. So this has been legal since 1911, but it really never took off. There wasn't much of a market for it until the 1980s when the AIDS epidemic came about. And there was a lot of people being diagnosed that had very short life expectancies, typically 24 months or less. And so these were known as viatical settlements, short term, 24 months or less to live. So these are very attractive to investors because they could get a short return on their money, 2 years or less, and a pretty good return. Now, as medical treatments became better and more effective, the life expectancies of these AIDS patients grew much longer than 2 years, whereas nowadays, in the 2013, 2014, if a person's diagnosed in their 20s and properly treated, they may live a normal life expectancy. They could live another 50 years, possibly. So it became very difficult for investors to find policies that that the owners had short life expectancy. They tried other illnesses, and they weren't able to find the market that they had initially. So the life settlement industry began to grow, which focused on folks that weren't necessarily terminally ill. They were typically over 65, 15 years or less to live, with some type of health conditions. And that opened up a whole new market. There was many, many people in this category, and it grew significantly. So in 2012, investors bought around $2 billion of face value of life insurance. It's still a relatively small market. There was less than 1,200 transactions. About 1,187 transactions took place in 2012. The peak of the industry was around 2009, where there was almost 5 times as much volume. It was around 10 or 11 billion dollars of face value. But as we saw, the economic issues, and especially in the capital markets, just the lack of capital available to invest, the market contracted considerably. Now we're starting to see a rebound. The other transition is policies used to be very large that were purchased. Typically, the average transaction was over $1 million, around $1 million life policy. And now that's coming down significantly where there's many investors buying policies, not many, but there is a growing number of investors buying policies under 500,000, even some down as small as 50,000. Regulations have also increased in many of the states. This is now a regulated transaction. There's more laws about the agents and the brokers that are marketing to help folks sell their policies, as well as on the investor side with the providers who are providing the capital and actually purchasing the policies. So that's the basics of what is a life settlement and the history. Feel free to check out our page and see more of the videos